On January 22, 1879, nearly 20,000 Zulu warriors stormed an Imperial camp, overwhelming 1,800 British soldiers armed with the era's deadliest rifles. The British believed victory was certain until their firepower and arrogance failed in a battle that shattered the myth of invincibility. How did a so-called tribe defeat a global superpower in open combat? To understand, you have to see exactly how confidence became catastrophe. Martini Henry rifles sat stacked in neat rows, each one capable of firing 12 rounds per minute. British officers drilled their men to load, aim, and fire with mechanical precision. Training manuals insisted that discipline and firepower were the backbone of victory. Artillery crews practiced setting up their guns in minutes, confident that a few well-placed shells would scatter any charge before it reached the line. The red-coated infantry had conquered distant lands with these same weapons and tactics, from India to the Ashanti coast. To the British command, the outcome at Isandlwana felt predetermined. Lord Chelmsford, in charge of the invasion, saw no reason for caution. He wrote that he left a garrison at the camp in case the enemy should have the temerity to attack during my absence. The very idea that Zulu warriors, armed with spears and shields, could break a line of British rifles was dismissed as fantasy. Doctrine stated that fortifications were unnecessary against native armies. Firepower was shield enough. The arrogance ran so deep that Chelmsford's own regulations requiring a defensible camp at every halt were quietly ignored. In the eyes of the Empire, modern rifles and European discipline would always triumph. The stage was set for a reckoning. Tents stretched in tidy rows across the grass, their white canvas bright under the African sun. There were no trenches, no ditches, no walls of wagons drawn into a defensive circle, a lager as the regulations demanded. The camp at Isandlwana, pitched on January 20th, stood open and exposed on every side. Soldiers went about their routines, some stacking supplies, others tending horses, all within an unfenced perimeter. The only barriers were the distant hills and the faith that no enemy with spears and shields could threaten a modern army. Orders for the camp made no mention of digging in or raising earthworks. The official field manual, Chelmsford's own, required a defensible position at every halt. But here those words were ignored. The ground was rocky, the wagons scattered for convenience, not protection. Officers relied on the same doctrine that had served the empire from India to the Cape, that firepower would keep danger at bay. Yet the open ground around Isandlwana offered no shelter if things went wrong. The British camp was a statement of confidence, but also an invitation. In the absence of walls, every tent, every supply cart, every man was exposed to whatever might come out of the hills. Vulnerability was built into the very layout of the camp, waiting to be exploited. For 2 days, the land around Isandlwana hid an army. 20,000 Zulu warriors, led by Inchingwayo Kamahole and Mavumengwana Kandlela, waited in silence. They pressed close together in the deep gullies and folds of the plain, holding their weapons, barely moving, not a whisper escaping. Scouts and patrols from the British camp searched the hills and valleys, but each time they peered into the distance, the earth seemed empty. No dust, no movement, just the endless grass and rocky outcrops. The Zulu warriors had trained for this kind of patience. They knew the ground better than any map could show. The gullies, called dongas, wound through the landscape like hidden roads, wide enough to swallow whole regiments. Warriors crouched low, sometimes sitting on their spears, breathing in rhythm with the wind. Not even a glint of a shield or the flash of a spear tip betrayed their numbers. British patrol logs later recorded nothing unusual. Reports came back that the main Zulu force was miles away. Officers in camp relaxed, convinced the area was clear. But the discipline among the Zulu ranks was absolute. Orders from Inchingwayo and Mavumengwana held thousands in check, each man trusting that the moment to rise would come. No fires were lit, no runners broke formation, every detail was rehearsed, every movement coordinated in silence. The Zulu army had learned to use the land as its ally, turning the very terrain into a cloak. For the British, the real danger was not what they could see, but what they could not. The invisible warriors were all around them, waiting for the signal that would change everything. At first light on January 22nd, Lord Chelmsford issued orders that would decide the fate of his command. Acting on reports of Zulu activity miles from camp, he divided his force. Chelmsford led over half his men, more than 2,500 troops, out of Isandlwana, marching southeast in search of what he believed was the main Zulu army. He left behind about 1,800 men, regulars of the 24th Regiment, colonial volunteers, and African auxiliaries, all under Colonel Pauline's command. The camp's defenses remained unchanged: no trenches, no lagered wagons, no fallback positions. The men who stayed behind continued their routines, unaware that their numbers had just been halved. Patrols rode out from camp, scanning the horizon for any sign of the enemy. Reports trickled in, nothing unusual, no large gatherings, just occasional glimpses of distant figures vanishing into the hills. The sense of routine held until late morning. Around 11 a.m., a detachment of mounted scouts gave chase to a small group of Zulus moving near the Ngwebeni Valley. What began as a routine pursuit ended in shock. The scouts crested a ridge and found themselves staring at a silent mass of thousands. 20,000 Zulu warriors, packed shoulder to shoulder, had been waiting in total silence, hidden by the folds of the land. Word raced back to the camp. Officers scrambled to assess the threat as the scale of the enemy became clear. Colonel Pauline ordered the men to stand to arms. Lines were hastily formed. The exposed tents and scattered wagons offered no cover. There was no time to dig in, no chance to prepare proper defenses. The British had been caught with their force divided and their camp wide open. The division of Chelmsford's force, based on faulty intelligence, left the camp fatally exposed. When the Zulu army was finally sighted, the British had no time, no fortifications, and nowhere to run. As the first Zulu regiments advanced from the valleys, the reality set in. The trap had snapped shut. The British camp, isolated, understrength, and unfortified, now faced the full weight of the Zulu army. The Zulu army surged forward in perfect order, every movement drilled and rehearsed for years. At the center, the chest of the formation pressed straight toward the British lines, drawing fire and pinning the defenders in place. On both sides, the horns swept wide and fast, thousands of warriors running in long arcs across the open plain. They covered ground at astonishing speed, some sprinting 100 yards in seconds. Their shields and spears held low as they used every dip and ridge for cover. The encirclement tightened with practiced precision. Regiments signaled each other by shield patterns and silent gestures, each horn curling inward to seal the British flanks. Within minutes of first contact, the camp's escape routes vanished. The British, still firing in disciplined volleys, found themselves facing attack from every side. The Zulu formation closed like a trap, leaving the defenders surrounded, pressed ever closer together, and cut off from the outside world. Ammunition runners darted between companies, their arms loaded with precious cartridges. But as the Zulu ring closed, disaster struck at the supply wagons. The ammunition boxes, designed for security, not speed, were sealed with screws. Quartermasters, already overwhelmed, fumbled for tools as the pressure mounted. Some were dead, others missing. In the chaos, the boxes stayed shut. Riflemen called for more rounds, but the line went silent. Soon, men were firing single shots, then nothing at all. The Zulus sensed the shift instantly. They surged forward, closing the final gap. Bayonets met spears, then broke. Soldiers fought with rifle butts and fists, the red earth stained with blood. By 3 in the afternoon, the defense collapsed. Over 1,300 British and colonial troops lay dead in the ruins of the camp. Zulu casualties ran high, between 1,000 and 3,000 killed. But the field belonged to them. The rout was complete. The world would soon learn the cost of arrogance. Military might still tempt nations to underestimate those they invade. The lessons of Isandlwana, respect for the opponent, and humility in planning remain as urgent now as in 1879. When power faces resolve and strategy, history shows the outcome is never guaranteed. What lessons do we keep ignoring today?